introduce your organization because Solar Cookers International is so thankful to have been a laureate. So we look forward to hearing more what that means for everybody else.
Okay, so our first slide, it's me. Okay, so the Global Warming Mitigation Project, this is what we do. We discover and deploy and decarbonize climate solutions internationally, for profit and nonprofit. And we all know there are a lot of problems. We all know about the climate disasters, and I am a climate scientist, and we all know that they're going to get worse because as the atmosphere and the oceans are heating up, we're going to have more energy, and it's going to create more issues. The good news is that many investments will be profitable. It's a transition, and when there are huge economic transitions, there are financial opportunities. But I want to emphasize that philanthropy plays a very important role, and GWMP is a nonprofit, and this role is undervalued. And there's also a big role for a trained workforce. So these are some of the problems, and let me tell you how we address the solutions. So GWMP has an interconnected program model that has the Keeling Curve Prize, and we have an open application. It's open right now, and you can apply for the prize, and then it goes through our analysts and our judges, and we award the prize annually. To date, we've had 60 laureates. Solar Cookers International is one of those laureates. And I will get a little bit more into how the prize interconnects with our other programs as well. There are so many gaps in climate solutions, so we look for ways to bridge these gaps. And in bridging these gaps, this is what is fundamental to our mission statement and our vision. And we look to have a planet that is sustaining life for all of us as we know it, and not as a dystopic future that is a possibility. None of us would like to see that happen. These are our three programs. The Keeling Curve Prize is the center program. You apply for that and you get involved with the other two programs. The Constellations Fellowship is a career pathway. We provide interns for winners and finalists of the Keeling Curve Prize, and it's both a win-win for the interns as well as the programs that they work for. And then the Climate Impact Conduit is a new online database that actually is designed for philanthropists and investors that are looking for programs and projects in the climate space. And you can look through our database. I'll show you a little bit more about that database a little bit later. This is what we talk about with the interconnectivity. They all support each other. And it's very important in a system that your pieces all support each other. And that's how we think of it with the Keeling Curve Prize and the programs and projects that revolve around it. We've seen amazing impacts. We have 60 laureates to date, and I have given out $1.75 million. Thank you. And we've seen that $1 million have an add-on value of roughly $2 billion, which is an incredible statistic. We also have self-reported data from the laureates on the gigatons that have been reduced, removed, or replaced in the atmosphere. And we are going to do the carbon accounting on that in 2024, but the self-reported data comes out to 3.27 gigatons annually. These are our laureates. It's an amazing group of people, and they are many logos that you might know because they have become quite famous as they succeed throughout the world. We're very proud of the laureate family. Is this the next?
Yep.
The video.
Yes.
Okay. How do we run the video?
Just hit next. Yep.
Keeling Curve Prize is in 5 categories. It's transport and mobility, energy, social and cultural pathways, finance, and carbon sinks. And those are both low-tech and high-tech. And as you saw in the video, there's examples of all of that. One of our testimonials from Nate Aiden is SBTI. He's in a financial, social, and cultural pathways sector. And our laureates have given us great testimonials. Rebecca Harmon is a Constellations Fellow, and she's talked about the incredible opportunities she's gotten from the Constellation Fellowship. And then Ashwati is a partner that we use in our conduit, our financial pathways programs that we develop with investors, interested investors throughout the world. This is just a quick snapshot of our growth and our journey over the last few years. It's really been a big milestone to get our conduit database online this year, so we're real proud of that, and we will show you a little bit more about that a little bit later. And this is another snapshot of what we want to do in the next 3 years. We want to really grow the opportunities that are surrounding the prize. We want to offer more of these fellowships to more organizations that are in need of the career building. And then there's a lot of opportunity, as we see here at COP, in creating more avenues for money to flow. And so that's a really important part of our next 3 years, is trying to unlock more money and get it into the programs and projects around the world that need it the most, which are really seeing the most impact in their communities. Here's just some of our supporters and partners. And this is my all-female team, which I'm very, very proud of. And we're here to all work together with everyone to build a livable planet. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Jackie, thank you so much for sharing more about that. We are just so thankful for all of the work that you've been doing and really the opportunity to work together, because it just allows us to share the voices of the people who are impacted with solar cooking that much further and impact that many more lives. So we are very appreciative. And you've actually invited a special guest here today. So would you like to introduce one of your judges who's helped make the magic happen?
I would love to. I have brought Stefan Nicolo, who is the managing director at FullCycle. And Stefan has become a good friend as well as a judge for the Keeling Curve Prize. Stefan, tell us about yourself.
Okay, thank you. Well, hi everyone. It's great to be here. Very much appreciate the invitation. My name is Stefan Nicolo. I consider myself very lucky because I get to focus on climate as a larger issue and its ancillary components all day, every day through many organizations and hats that I wear. Of course, I'm a judge for the Keeling Curve Prize, and so I remember voting for you guys, and I'm very grateful that you not only won, but that it was catalytic in your growth. That's the point of what we're doing here. Part of how I see the opportunities around me is kind of thinking about, what are the greatest levers of action for us to achieve a low carbon transition that is effective, that is just, and how does capital play a role in that? So at FullCycle, we're a fund focused on technology, right? We invest in technology companies, but we also build the infrastructure. And part of the reason we do that is because a lot of times what happens for companies is they may have a core innovation that is catalytic, that is transformational, but getting to the point of building a $100 million thing that represents their technology is really difficult. And so what we do is we find opportunities to partner with those companies and accelerate what that may look like for them. And of course, because we focus on the levers of action, we focus a lot on methane, right? We really kind of center the technologies that have the highest impact on that very important greenhouse gas, and really start to order the field in a way that is not necessarily driven by who or what will be a unicorn, although we like unicorns like everyone else. We center instead their ability to abate the most amount of the harmful greenhouse gases in the shortest time frame possible, right? That's really the game here. And we try and make sure that our model, our methodology, the way we rank and order technology by efficacy is not something that we keep to ourselves, but instead is shared with the market so that other funds who maybe don't have the science-based climate understanding can still replicate a business model that works, right? Because at the end of the day, it's not just that we have diminishing time. is that we have limited resources. And we've got to move trillions of dollars into a low carbon and just future in a very short time frame. So by galvanizing and empowering other organizations to make business decisions about where they allocate capital, that's the most effective way to move trillions of dollars. So that's kind of how FullCycle sees the world. We have a theory of change. Early in our trajectory, I would say two things. One, we felt more like we were earth science professors than we were investors because we had to bring people up the curve of understanding. Today, I'm really heartened that we are having these conversations in rooms not of climate people, but just of folks who are in business, and yet still they have enough awareness and understanding that we can actually talk about the opportunity to do the work that we know is necessary in mitigating particularly methane. I think the other piece of it is, how do we make sure that we have the capacity to scale everywhere in the world? So, can you invest in technologies that have economics that work as well in New Delhi and Jakarta as they do in Berlin and San Francisco? This is about building out low carbon infrastructure, not just for the mitigation of greenhouse gases, but for the leveling of the field and stabilization of the conditions of people who are, in most cases, least responsible for the warming that we're experiencing in the atmosphere and are yet in harm's way in ways that we've seen and ways that are yet to come. So I will say part of what I do is I run a program office called the Astra Project, and that's focused on kind of the intersection between public sector and private sector so that we have enough relationship between the two such that when we make a commitment here at the COP to reduce methane by 30% by 2030, we have the mechanisms in the private sector to actually do that. We can move the capital, we can build the assets, and we can act in alignment to that stated ambition by virtue of real decisions that get made about capital allocation. So that's me. I am very lucky that I get to do this all day. You can tell I have a passion for it. I'm very grateful to be a judge for the Keeling Curve Prize because I think part of how we build capacity for what we do is we catalyze those folks who are doing this really important work, and we give them the ability to show up for this fight as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing about that. Yeah, we can do a round of applause. We really appreciate you sharing your expertise, and also thank you for the vote as well. It's definitely come in handy. But I really want to bring it back. So Solar Cookers International, as a nonprofit, funding that you both talked about and mentioned is so pivotal because we are trying to address a challenge that affects approximately 2.4 billion, with a B, people who are cooking over open fires and really impacts all of us because we are all dramatically impacted by climate change. And there are more people than we are able to help. So when we're able to have that influx of financial resources, that's more solar cooks. That's more change for our planet. That's better lives and livelihoods. And so it really makes such a difference. We're actually going to hear more from Keith in a little bit in his conversations with some of these solar cooks that the Keeling Curve Prize has made possible, the impact it's had on their lives. But I just want to emphasize how important and pivotal that is for nonprofits and what an incredible opportunity it is. So Jackie, you mentioned that applications are actually open right now for the Keeling Curve Prize. So maybe you could share a little bit more about that, if you have any instructions or guidance or what you're looking for. And then afterwards, Stefan, maybe you can share as a judge what you're looking for from those applications so that we have some more successful winners out there.
Okay, so yes, the application is open now and it's live. And I think the easiest way for people to go find the application is just to go to gwmp.org, and it just comes up right on our homepage and it says apply here. And we have an amazing new application portal that was just designed this year that is really streamlined and lovely. So hopefully that makes it easy for some people to apply. It seems very intuitive. And then we do take 500 applications. The application period does go till February 12th, or if we get the 500 applications. So I don't want people to wait. I want them to get on it and get their applications in. We don't want to be in a situation where people are like, why did I get shut out? And it's because we do a really good job of reading all the applications and working together on our team to make sure everybody has seen, who's applying for the Keeling Curve Prize. And so that has to take us some time.
Yeah.
So we don't take more applications than 500.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we'll just,
We wanted to invite Satya Tripathi up on the stage.
Yes?
I invited myself.
Satya.
So joining us now is another of the Keeling Curve Prize judges, Satya Tripathi. He's the Secretary General of the Global Alliance for a Sustainable Planet. That's GASP. So Satya, why don't you say a few words about yourself and about the program that you run?
Thank you, Jacqueline. So we are a catalyst. We think system scale because there's so much action happening that the world does not need another not-for-profit that replicates and duplicates what others are doing. So we're in a very unique space. We look at a system scale problem. We find champions, potentially incubate their ideas. Just to give you an example, an outrageous example. So on the 2nd of December, we signed an agreement with Federated Hermes. It was publicly announced, so I can talk about it. It's a $715 billion entity. And so and it was launched in the presence of the First Minister of Scotland, who's very keen to support. And his thesis is that Scotland, as small as it is the oil and gas capital of Europe. And so they want to make amends. These are things he said publicly when we were announcing the partnership. So I'm possibly paraphrasing him, but that's what he said. And he said, when the Loss and Damage Fund was announced 2 years ago in Glasgow, we were the first ones to announce a £2 million grant, the first ones. He said, and I see that as virtue signaling. And in 2 years now, that fund has grown to $500 million. So that's great investment for Scotland. He said, that's why I'm here today, so that we will support you, and we want you to get to that scale very soon. And what we are working on is this, in the partnership with Federated Hermes, is we're trying to create a new institution called the World Climate and Nature Guarantee Facility. And the idea is to provide $100 billion in first loss guarantees in the next 15 years. That would unlock $1 trillion in investment in Mother Nature, or what we more popularly call nature-based solutions. Now, this can all be nice talk unless you produce the investments and the deal flows and all. So we said to ourselves that on the day you open the doors of that new institution in 6 months, we will take the legal architecture, the countries, the institutions that will all come together. You need to produce $1 billion investment on day one that you are disbursing that day. Then people will believe you, otherwise people have no business to believe you because you're not adding value, you're adding to the noise. So that's what we do. Our idea is to do system scale. There are programs that we support globally that are extraordinary in their scope and substance. One of the programs we're supporting is to convert 6 million women farmers to zero synthetic chemical farming. And along that journey, the program has already converted 1 million farmers. It is already the world's largest regenerative agriculture program by a mile. There's nothing like this anywhere. And so that's what we do. And so proud to be a part of the Keeling Curve Prize journey, which chooses extraordinary champions and becomes the wind under their wings, and their sails, and helps them soar. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Thank you so much for being here. Solar Cookers International, yes, please, round of applause. Solar Cookers International, as a laureate of the Keeling Curve Prize, has had such an incredible impact, both for our organization, but really most importantly, the people that we work with. So thank you for that. And we are just encouraging others to apply so they can become laureates as well. But we were wondering if you as judges have any tips or insights in terms of what you're looking for specifically in climate solutions. Stefan, we can start with you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, look, I love reviewing the applications. You really get to see what people are focused on, and it gives you hope that some of the brightest minds in the world that could be doing anything are focused on this issue. It heartens me a lot. But ultimately, I think what we want to catalyze are solutions that can be both effective, in the emissions kind of realm of things, but also in the adaptation realm of things. You want to see solutions that can scale to the point where they actually act in service of people and improving those conditions. So I think one of the things I love as well is that there is diversity of folks who apply, and you can kind of see the various dimensions and angles by which people are tackling climate and nature. I think that, I think a couple of things. I think obviously methane. A few weeks ago, someone called me the methane guy, and I just said, I hope that's for the right reasons. And so, focusing on methane, of course. I think focusing on deforestation, right? What we do about that, big challenge, is a big one. I think that if we go down the list of the emergency brakes, I'm on the board of Project Drawdown, and we kind of scale this out and talk about what are the emergency brakes that we have to pull first before we start to accelerate certain technologies. And I think that's important because we're at a point where the order of operations really matters. We cannot just do anything and then hope that it all summates to the 1.5 degree or less world that we deserve to live into. So really I'm looking at that kind of field ordering framework that allows me to say, okay, I can see how this has an effect on alleviating or stopping deforestation. I can see how this has an effect on methane. But then I think the other thing is the underexplored and under-invested into intersections of nature and climate, I think are really important. And if you start to understand the science and the technicality, you start to see innovations that you wouldn't necessarily think can play that role, but really do. So I'll give you one example, not of an applicant, but of something that maybe would be interesting to see if anyone's out there watching and listening. One of the best ways to understand the health of an ecosystem and to understand the diversity, the biodiversity therein, is by putting sensors that capture sound. Right? We want to hear what's happening on the ground. What species are interacting? Where is the mating happening? Do you have certain kinds of pollinators in the field? So that's not necessarily the kind of innovation that you would think of applying for a prize, except when that catalytic capital comes in, you can go to many of the different ecosystems around the world that are imperiled by the things that we humans are doing to diminish biodiversity. Maybe there's a way we could turn the tide in that realm. So that's a hypothetical example that probably exists in a startup somewhere, and that's the kind of thing that we look for because we really have to tackle these core areas from every possible dimension possible. And if we do that well, then I think we're catalyzing the right technologies in the right order. And as a judge, it's an honor to think about that and be able to apply my mind to how we deploy the capital that you're deploying.
Thank you so much for explaining that and the framework and the thought process that goes behind it. I can see, with solar cooking, I love it because we're preventing deforestation, as you said, because people don't have to chop down trees in order to cook. And we're also preventing emissions. For example, one family can save from burning 1 ton of wood with 1 solar cooker in a year. So multiply that by the 2.4 billion people cooking over open fires, and the impact is incredible from multiple angles, leaving trees where they should be and not creating additional emissions, both for themselves as well as the planet. So yeah, thank you so much for explaining that. And Sasha, would you like to share a little bit from your perspective as a judge in terms of
I have a very interesting story to share. When you talked about a ton of solid fuel being saved with solar cookers, I was about 16, I started shaving, and I was stupid like all 16-year-olds. So I opened the tap. We lived in a house where we had a municipal tap connection, and in those days there were no meters or anything. So you open it, and I'm trying to shave and putting it in. My mother, tremendous wisdom. So she brings in 3 big buckets of 20 liters each or 22 liters each. So she keeps bringing them. I thought, maybe she wants to catch the water because she wants to take it for gardening or something, I didn't even see a purpose there, and I completely ignored her like all 16-year-olds do. And so by the time I had finished my shaving, she had caught 66 liters of water and some more. So the next morning, she came with a half a liter jug with some water and some warm water in it, and she said, well, you could shave and you could just turn and twist, and then you'll be fine. And I found it actually much more efficient. So recently, my daughter, who's studying to be a scientist, she's at Johns Hopkins, so she said, what is it that you've done that you're most proud of as a climate activist, And I told her this story, I said, this is what happened, and and she said, Dad, you've saved 1 million liters of fresh water. And then I added tongue in cheek by not being stupid. So there are lessons for you. And I was telling her, But this is what it is. So, a problem created by 8 billion people is not going to be solved by a few governments and few companies. It is this that is important to keep on top of our minds. If you look at the app, that helps you drive through a toll plaza without having to stop, just because you have an app that pays for itself, how many billions of liters of gasoline we have saved? Incredible. So technological innovations that might just look like an app or just look like a software actually have the potential to bring about the kind of climate action that we desperately need. And that's where, when we look at the applicants and the shortlisted finalists and all, that's what stands out, both in terms of their ambition, imagination, and passion. And of course, the potential to scale, because that's what we need at this time. It's a very depressing time. If you look at the science, for those of us that have been doing this, I used to be the head of the Global Environment Management Group of the UN. So half of my day went in studying what reports are coming out, or what's the science, and how do we as the UN position ourselves in that conversation, how can we drive change? And then so knowing all that, it's pretty depressing. That we roughly have 10 to 15 years, as Stefan rightly pointed out. We need the emergency brakes. Otherwise, we are literally down the slope with nothing to stop us. And it's not about the planet. The planet will be fine after we are gone. It had been fine before we came about and replicated ourselves into the billions. So it's about us. In a very selfish way, we need to save ourselves, not the planet. Planet will be fine.
Thank you so much for that very personal example that I think relates to what we're all working towards. And in the effort of sharing more about these examples, I'd like to introduce Keith Wingard, who is the Strategic Partnerships Manager for Solar Cookers International. And he's going to share a little bit more about what a solar cooker is, how Solar Cookers International works, how we're working to scale up these very personal and practical solutions.
Thanks, Caitlin. As Caitlin mentioned, my name is Keith. I'm the Strategic Partnerships Manager with Solar Cookers International. We're a nonprofit organization based in the United States, but we have partnerships with small organizations around the world that are trying to find ways to make solar cooking an effective way to access clean cooking technology, to avoid burning biomass, wood, charcoal, and other fuel sources for cooking purposes. The work that we do connects to health, because if you're relying on wood and charcoal, then that means you're burning fuel every day for cooking, and it means you're breathing in smoke in your kitchen every day. It connects to gender, because cooking is something that disproportionately impacts women and girls, both in going to collect firewood and then in actually doing that cooking activity. So this is a gender issue that also links to gender empowerment, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a few moments. This is an environmental issue, as we were talking about a little bit earlier. Solar cooking can help decrease the demand on forest resources, decrease the reliance on cutting down trees to use for burning for cooking purposes, and that creation of charcoal as well. And it's an economic savings issue as well. Every meal that you cook with free solar energy means you have a smaller cooking fuel budget for your household. So the economic savings, the gender impacts, the health, these are the things that we talk about when we talk about why solar cooking can be beneficial. But now let's also think about what is solar cooking. This is maybe something that's not as familiar with some people. The solar cooking that I'm talking about is what we refer to as solar thermal cooking. Many people right now hear the word solar and their mind immediately goes to photovoltaics. Solar for electricity, right? You use photovoltaics to generate electricity. There's also solar thermal, which in the past has been used for things like water heating and other uses. Solar thermal cookers, like we see on these slides, on this slide here, allow for the redirection of sunlight towards a center point or inside of a receptacle that allows temperatures that get hot enough to heat and cook your food. At the very basic level, you have what's called a reflective panel cooker. This basic cooker can be made out of cardboard with a reflective surface, which folds up for storage and then unfolds, and you can put it out in the sun, and you have a black pot in the center The sunlight redirects towards the black pot. The black pot absorbs that sunlight and creates heat that allows for that cooking to take place. Solar Cookers International had an exhibit booth the first few days of COP, and we had direct sunlight at our exhibit booth. So for the first time this year at COP28, we had a chance to do some solar cooking in the blue zone at COP. We just had some vegetables that we chopped up, some potatoes, green peppers, onions, that kind of thing, put it in our pot, put it out in the sun for a few hours, and allowed that sunlight to cook some food that we later enjoyed. The center version of a solar cooker that you can see is called a box oven. So again, there's a mirror on the box oven that unfolds and redirects that sunlight into the box, and then inside that box you have your food, your pot, whatever receptacle you have for cooking, and you can cook your food. The first two examples are what are often referred to as passive cooking technologies. You can leave these technologies out in the sun while you go do your other activities. So there's a component of time saving as well. We were speaking with someone a few days ago. One of the other gender components that comes into play here is the unpaid work, household work that women are often responsible for. And so by putting your food in the box oven and going to do other things, that decreases that burden of unpaid household activities or chores. And then the third example is what's called a parabolic reflector. Parabolic reflectors concentrate sunlight to a central point. So if you can see in the picture, there's a pot in there. It's hard to see because it's very bright, but that high concentration of sunlight can create much higher temperatures. So a parabolic reflector can get to temperatures that are hot enough to fry food. So if you're making a stir fry, and that is what would be called active cooking. You need to be actively stirring your food so it doesn't burn because the temperatures are much higher. The first two are more akin to what we would refer to as like slow cooking. So it takes a little bit of time for the temperatures to heat up. Those are great for foods like rice, beans, potatoes, like I mentioned, whereas the parabolic reflector gets that high temperature for frying. So different solar cookers might be relevant for different types of foods or different purposes. We also, when we're talking about solar cooking, we want to mention that this is what we refer to as an integrated cooking solution. Solar thermal cooking in particular is dependent on direct sunlight. So you can't cook 100% of your meals with a solar cooker, but even 25% of your meals with a solar cooker can significantly reduce your household fuel budget. And we also talk about using complementary technologies like a retained heat basket, which you can cook your food during the daytime and then put your pot into a retained heat basket, which will keep it warm into the evening when you can enjoy your meal later in the day. And the other item is the water pasteurization indicator, or a WAPI. And this helps you identify when water has reached a sufficient temperature to kill off any bacteria in the water source. So solar cookers can also be used for treating water and allowing it to be safe to drink. I'll also mention a couple other examples. The Fresnel lens, the Fresnel mirror, and evacuated tubes are other technologies. It's exciting to see that there continues to be innovation in what solar cookers are being manufactured and produced and innovated upon. These are a few more examples. And then at a larger scale, there's also something called institutional solar cooking. So this is something that's being done in particular in South Asia, in India and Nepal, for example, where there are large systems often placed on rooftops that allow for that direct sunlight to create steam to cook indoors at the kitchen below at a larger scale. And one example that we've heard about is an ashram in India where they're cooking 40,000 meals per day for the faithful that come and visit.
I've been there actually.
Okay, yeah, Satya's been there, which maybe he can tell us a little bit more about it. But I'll skip ahead real quick. Coming back to Solar Cookers International, our mission is to improve human health, economic well-being, women's empowerment, and the environment by doing everything we can to promote solar cooking in places where it's appropriate around the world. It's in some ways a little fortuitous. Many of the places around the world that still rely on wood and charcoal and other biomass for cooking happen to be the places that have the most reliable sunlight. So that means solar cooking is a particularly effective option for places in Africa, South Asia, Southeast Asia, where you have an abundance of sunshine. And we need to find ways that we can start taking advantage of that sunlight for cooking purposes. We have hundreds of collaborators in over 135 countries, and we have been leading the solar cooking sector since 1987. So last thing before we move on, how do we operate as an organization? So we look at a couple specific things in particular. We do advocacy at events like COP28 here today. Our team has been here for the last week and a half, finding ways to talk about solar cooking. We had the solar cooking exhibit early on, which was an example for people to come see what solar cooking looks like. And we've been talking to government representatives to see if there's opportunities for governments to put in place supportive policies that allow for solar cooking to really take off. We also do research. My colleague Alan will talk a little bit more about research but that's something that we do to help allow for stove testing of solar cook stoves to determine the efficacy of those solar cookers, which is important for people that are interested in purchasing one, or for project designers who are looking to see what kind of solar cooking power they can expect from a particular device. And then we do capacity building. So we work directly with local implementing partners in places like Kenya, where we have a program at the Kakuma refugee camp, and in Nepal, where we have a program with a partner there as well. So those are the different types of ways that we try to create an ecosystem that allows for solar cooking to take hold and scale up. And some of that looks like paving the ground for private businesses to manufacture solar cookers. Sometimes that looks like using a pilot to establish that solar cooking can work in a particular location. So that's just a little bit about what Solar Cookers International does. But I will pass it back to Caitlin to continue our panel discussion.
Yeah, thank you so much, Keith, for giving that overview of solar cooking. And I know that you were recently in Kenya, actually, for Africa Climate Week, and you also had a chance to visit Kakuma refugee camp, where we've had the honor of working with many refugees and sharing solar cooking with them. So I'm hoping you can share a little bit about your impressions and insights from that, and any words or such from the people who you spoke with.
Yeah, great. Yeah, okay. I'll keep going. We'll come back to this one. I'll talk a little bit more about Kenya in particular. So as Caitlin mentioned, I was in Kenya in September, it was a great opportunity to see the impact that solar cooking is actually having on those that have traditionally been relying on wood and biomass for cooking. One of the reasons I went was for Africa Climate Week, and it was really interesting and a great opportunity to network and talk to government representatives and other nonprofit civil society organizations in that part of the world. But it was also a great opportunity to go talk to solar cooker users. And so we did a few conversations with our partners there, and what we were hearing is that time savings component was really important for the families, and the fuel savings as well. One of the common things that was mentioned is before families or women were purchasing a sack of charcoal about once a week, and now that's once every 2 or 3 weeks. So decreasing by 50% sometimes, or even more, the amount of charcoal that is being used for cooking is the type of real impact that allows for significant economic savings. Some of the research that we've been doing in our surveys with our implementing partners has shown that on average, families are saving about $70 per year on fuel costs alone. So that economic impact is often the first thing that gets mentioned, because it's going straight to the pocket. It's going straight to that household fuel budget. But we also heard about the decrease in smoke in kitchens, and how that was allowing for women and children to not have as many respiratory illnesses. And eye illnesses as well is another common illness that comes from smoky kitchens. We also heard about gender-based violence. Technically, in Kenya, there was legislation passed that made it illegal to collect firewood because of the deforestation and forest degradation issue. However, if you don't have enough money to purchase firewood, that means you still need to cook your food, that means you're going to try to go out and find whatever wood or fuel that you can in order to cook food for your children or your family. What has at times happened is that this has led to conflict between the local Turkana population in northern Kenya and the refugee population, to the point where there were examples of gender-based violence and significant injuries, and from what I was told, there was even a case where someone was killed because they were collecting firewood, and there was a conflict that ensued. So allowing for solar cooking to be part of this solution can decrease that demand on the forest and can decrease the chance for that conflict to take place. I also want to turn to one individual in particular who's photographed on this slide. Her name is Rebecca. She is a refugee from South Sudan. She fled a conflict situation in South Sudan about 10 or 15 years ago, and she came to northern Kenya to try to establish a new life. She has been cooking with charcoal or wood for the majority of her time in northern Kenya, but she recently was part of the round of box ovens distributed by Solar Cookers International and our local implementing partners. And she found that it was so useful for her that she very enthusiastically volunteered to become a trainer for the next cycle. So the following year, we had a new batch of box ovens that were ordered and manufactured locally in Kenya. Whenever possible, we're looking to find ways to make sure that manufacturing happens in country to reduce the cost of the device and to allow for livelihoods to also take hold. And Rebecca, speaking in a common local language and speaking from a place of experience, having already been used to using this box oven device, is teaching new families about how to effectively use this box oven so that you can reduce your fuel budget, you can increase your health outcomes, and you can cook your food using sunlight. Unfortunately, Rebecca isn't able to be here with us today, but we do have a short video that we wanted to share so that we can give her a chance to talk about what it's like to use a box oven. She'll be speaking in her native language, but there is a kind of a summary text next to it. So I'll go ahead and play that video.
Imeiva?
Imeiva sana.
Umejaribu?
Nimejaribu. Hii jiko ni kufurahisha. Nimefurahi sana kwa hii jiko. Sasa mimi sina shida. Hii jiko ilikuwa niko na roho mbili. Kwa sikuamini ati hii jiko itapika. Tangu nitoa hiyo jiko nilete huko, nilikuwa nashamusha naye maji tu nikulaga, siwezi amini ati atapika. Ndio hii kideri imeiva na amechukua 3 hours and a half. Ndio kideri ndio imeiva. Kwanza imeiva smart sana. Nimefurahi sana kwa hii jiko.
Very good.
Na yeye amereduce jukumu yangu. Utafuta makaa
kuni kwanza.
Stress imereduce.
Amen. God is good.
Sasa mimi nikitaka kupika natumia hii jiko.
Hivyo tu.
Naomba Mungu mvua isije.
Aha. Good.
Hii jiko nataka nini?
Hata ndiye unakula.
Hivi. Kama sana.
Sawa. Sasa hii ni githeri, mahindi na maragwe. 3 hours and a half. Imeiva sana, lakini juu tu mtoto alikuja akamaga maji baridi. Otherwise ni 3 hours peke yake. Lakini hakuna shida. Next time tutakuja tena kupika siku ngine, kitu ngine tofauti, si ndio? Tutapika kitu ngine tofauti, ama nyama, ama mayai, ama nini. Yani tutapika. So sai hata namshukuru.
Mtoto yako hata anapenda.
Aha.
Ndio yeye anataka.
Very good.
So I was there with Rebecca about 2 months ago in that exact that's where her home is, and I was speaking with her, and it was really an honor to have the opportunity to hear directly from Rebecca and to hear what it's been like to have a solar box oven there to cook her food. And like I mentioned earlier, these passive cooking technologies, these box ovens, are especially effective for rice, beans, potatoes, those kinds of foods that you want to kind of simmer slowly over time. And actually, if you cook, it doesn't create a temperature that's high enough where you're going to burn your food. So Rebecca was saying she doesn't have to worry that the food's going to get burned and then it's wasted. She can put it in her box oven out in the sunlight when she has that direct sunlight, let it cook, and then she comes back and it's ready to go and ready to eat, and it's nutritious food that allows her to eat and to feed her kids as well. So that's just one small example. Here's a few pictures of what that looks like in practice, though. We didn't want to talk about cooking and talk about food and not give you a chance to see the finished product. So these are all things that have been cooked by refugee families peas, rice, beans, potatoes, rice and beans at the Kakuma refugee camp. So I'll leave it there, and we'll pass it back to Caitlin.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Keith, for sharing really what touches our hearts. I mean, it's universal. We all need to eat. We all experience the sun. And that joy of being able to share that with her child in a healthy way, and just to share, she has 7 kids, and despite all of the challenges that she's experienced, she's also taking care of 3 orphans. And if you can see, she also has a disability. So if you can imagine how challenging it would be to gather and carry firewood, what she's able to do to take care of herself and her family, you can see that pride, that expertise that then she's able to share with her community. And she's now a fierce advocate for solar cooking. She's like, I want all of my neighbors to be solar cooking. Let's make this happen. So I appreciate everybody here today wanting to be a part of that solution to scale it up, because that's what we need to do for every single Rebecca out there. Yeah, go for it.
I just want to make it really clear why I checked the box and voted for you, right? You see in that video a couple of things. I think first is the alternative to the fuels that, when partially combusted, release black carbon into the atmosphere. When fully combusted, release methane. When they're, and are part of the CO2 story as well. But I think what we sometimes lose track of in climate is that ultimately this is a human story. This is about what happens to people, and not just the moral calling for us to share and understand our shared conditions with people around the world, people we'll never meet. I think it's also that the mind that might solve our next greatest challenge, that might cure cancer, get us off this planet, might be that little boy who, undernourished, malnourished, doesn't have the capacity to do what he is meant to do. And I'm calling us to a bigger picture here, and you see a picture, you see it in that video.
Yeah.
And it's really wonderful and noble, and I just want to applaud you guys again. If I could, I'd vote for you twice. Thanks.
We appreciate that. Yeah, that's exactly why we're doing it, right? Because, I mean, and smoke, too, it can have cognitive impacts. And, pregnant women, if they're experiencing smoke, it's already impacting the next generation. So it's now and forever unless we make it a better way. So, yeah.
Can I add something
Yeah,
too, Kaylee?
please.
So one of the things that Stefan and I have also talked about too is that people say all the time, they're just like, what are we going to do if we can't get like oil and gas into Africa? And this is a perfect example of you can cook without methane going into the infrastructure of Africa. And this is just true proof that we can believe in a future, that we can get beyond the ability of like fossil fuels polluting our planet. And I think that I also want to add that this gives this woman dignity as well, which is an incredible thing to see.
Yep. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. She doesn't have to risk being raped in gathering fuel. Actually, Keith, I think you were saying that one of the people who you spoke with shared that a 14-year-old girl was beheaded while looking for firewood. And nobody should have to experience that just to be able to cook and for their family to eat. So, literally life-changing. So Alan, I'd like to introduce Dr. Alan Bigelow, who is the Program and Science Director of Solar Cookers International, who's also been to Kenya. So if you have any impressions that you want to share having been to Kakuma Refugee Camp, please do, as well as Keith mentioned the household economic impacts, but it's also incredible on a country level. So if you'd like to say anything about that.
Yes, thank you, Caitlin. It's really a pleasure to be here today. I've enjoyed meeting you both and looking forward to continuing the conversation. One thing that I really like about that video we just watched was to hear Rebecca say, "Tamu sana," which means it tastes really good. So it's her own voice acknowledging that the food that's being cooked with a solar cooker is delicious. And I just love that every time I hear that. So thank you, Keith, for telling the story from Kakuma. And when we look at the economic benefits, that's just one facet of this picture of how solar cookers are changing people's lives. And as the Program and Science Director at Solar Cookers International, my background, I'm a physicist, and I'm very interested in information that we can gather, data, and that is something that is extremely important from these initiatives. An initiative like this one at Kakuma Refugee Camp is ideal for Solar Cookers International to acquire information from the users. In fact, the information gathering is part of the deal that we have with the participants in the initiative. Given that this community is not legally allowed to work for income, it's difficult for us to sell a solar cooker for money. However, we want some kind of contribution so that there's an appreciation level for that object. Otherwise, in the development space, meaning those who are bringing technologies to areas where they're needed, if the objects are gifts, or en français, si c'est un cadeau, it might not go very well. Ça ne va pas aller très bien. So in this case, we have the refugee participants that we work with in this instance, giving their time for training sessions, giving permission for the enumerators, meaning the monitoring and evaluation team, to come into their compounds, their homes, to talk to them, for allowing their own cookware to be used in this new cooking device, and also to allow the exterior of their cooking pots to be painted black so that they're more effective at absorbing sunlight and converting the energy of light to thermal energy, heat. And then finally, this information exchange will give us results like one that Keith mentioned earlier, that a refugee family, a single family, may save about $70 US a year. That is an extremely important amount of money for a refugee family, especially if they're not working. Now, on top of that, these refugee families are often saving food, because another pathway for a refugee at Kakuma Refugee Camp to access cooking fuel is to barter some of their food rations for fuel. And so there are a number of factors here at play, but if we, again, just look at the economics of this, $70 per family is an extraordinary difference, but countrywide, one thing that Solar Cookers International has done is to create some impact summaries, or economic impact summaries. And on the slide here that you can see, this is the page for Kenya. Countrywide, we look at the number of people in Kenya who would be cooking with polluting fuels on a regular basis. If those people could cook 1/4 of their meals with the solar cooker and reduce the amount of smoke that's emitted, what kind of impacts would they have? And on this sheet, it shows how much emission reduction there would be. But at the bottom line, for a country like Kenya, on an annual basis, when you factor in the environmental and health costs saved, meaning reduced, it's on the order of $2 billion US. So this is the kind of impact something like a solar cooker can have if it is truly implemented at scale on a national basis. So thank you, Caitlin, for asking about that. And we have these impact sheets on our website, at Solar Cookers International's website, solarcookers.org. So please visit the site, and you can see impact sheets for all the countries that we have where solar cooking is happening.
Thank you, Alan. And just to add on that, one of the things that Solar Cookers International does is we work to share this information to empower everybody that we work with. We also manage the world's largest online database of solar cooking information, solarcooking.org, where you can actually go search for your country by name, see who else is solar cooking. There's lots of open source design plans. So it really is the people's solution. You were talking about, the infrastructure needed for, some of these bigger discussions, but all of us can start solar cooking today. You can all make a solar cooker with probably what you have in your kitchen right now. So it's a solution that all of us can be a part of. And I want to draw a parallel between creating databases to share information and aggregate these solutions, because this is something that the Keeling Curve Prize and the Global Warming Mitigation Project has done on a larger scale as well. So we're going to do a little experiment. Bear with us. Have a little patience and some innovation. We're going to try getting a little tour from Jackie of that. So we're going to switch seats.
Okay, this is a big deal because we got our entire applicant database uploaded online on a really innovative platform called the Climate Impact Conduit. And we're gonna show you we're gonna show it to you and see how it works. This is the, as far as I know, largest climate solutions database that anyone has anywhere. And it has 1,162 projects on it. And I think, oh.
Do you want to switch?
Yeah, let me
Yep.
switch with Caitlin so I can walk us through. So we just launched this in September, and this has climate solutions from all over the world. You can search by the type of organization, what category they applied for in the Keeling Curve Prize, the size of the company, the location. We have regional locations around the world, whether they were a winner or a finalist, and there are several category themes that you can look for. So if you are looking for, let's say, cooking solutions, and you want to also look in Southern Africa, then you just apply all. Doesn't look like we have any in there. I should have probably checked this out first. Let's see about agriculture.
Oh, that's cooling.
Okay, so agricultural solutions throughout Southern Africa, and you get a list, and you can go through, and let's say you want to check on one of these, like one of our winners over the years was Canopy, which I just saw. And then you can go on to Canopy, and it will give you all kinds of information about the organization. Seems to be loading. So you can get information like a Climate Solutions Wikipedia. And then if you're interested in actually engaging with us more and finding out some of their financial statistics, what kind of seed round they might be in, how to connect with them independently, then we will have a customized membership where you can contact us and work with us in order to get hands-on help from the Keeling Curve Prize. And we can also create pitch events for family foundations. And this is just another amazing way to connect money with projects and to connect more people with more solutions in the climate space.
Very well said, Jackie. Thank you so much. And actually, I'd like to invite our judges to add on to that if they'd like to comment on the value that the Global Warming Mitigation Project brings in connecting these opportunities for laureates such as ourselves.
So, I think part of it is, if you're not every day, all day looking at solutions, like I said at the outset, I'm lucky. I get to do this stuff all day, but not everyone does. And so having a well-structured, well-organized database of active, effective participants with this level of granular detail of how they impact and effectuate the issues that we care about, where they're located, it ends up being kind of the way that it ends up allowing us to organize as investors the way we think about risk, the way we think about preferences and how we invest, the way we want to show up and have impacts in the world. And so, that kind of well-structured data is the base layer to really good decision-making. And like I said earlier, the order of operations of what we tackle first, second, and third really matters. And so if we don't have well-organized data and it's just a scattered field, we might end up with the best EV charging infrastructure in a world totally on fire, right, where people are suffering. And so we really do have to think about how we order the deployment of capital, and this is the kind of tool that helps us do that. And I know there's things down the pipeline that GWMP is planning that will additionally help people start to make those investments.
Thank you. Satya, would you like to add?
Well, I think the most important thing is, I was this morning, I was at a gathering at the EY Pavilion in the Green Zone where my good friend Joe Madden, the founder of Expansive, and a few others were coming together to present something that has been really required, which is that you have farmers doing all the stuff, but they're smallholders, they're tiny. They don't have access to the carbon markets, they don't have the ability, they don't have the resources. Most of the time they don't even understand what to do and who to talk to. These are not the kind of people that are finalists in a KCP prize, because these are knowledgeable people that are doing, it's a very structured, different environment. And then there is that world of finance, which understands a particular language and understands risk as being, possibility, probability times impact is the metric they understand. They don't understand how risk is understood by the farmer. So somebody needs to create that data stack that builds the trust, which can actually help the trillions flow. Otherwise, we'll keep talking about, we don't even have billions and the nature-based solutions need trillions to make a difference. So I think this is what it does. It creates that trust, that information subset, which has been vetted, has been looked at by very credible people, and some of them, of course, got the prize, the others didn't. But bringing all of that together creates that neural bridge between those that need the resources and those that have the ability to deploy the resources. Otherwise, they're both in their silos and both really looking for each other, but the matchmaking doesn't happen. So I think this is that, it opens up that gate of opportunities. So I think it's wonderful.
Thank you so much for highlighting the importance of aggregating and matching these solutions and the people interested in investing in them. And Alan, I'd like to invite you to share a little bit from the perspective of a winner of the Keeling Curve Prize, what it's meant. Because, yeah, I think you highlighted such a really the value that it can have. And I think, Alan, you can share a little bit having been to the laureates reception as well. So,
Thank you, Caitlin. And thank you, Jackie, for running this program. The Keeling Curve Prize has been a tremendous award for SCI, and it has made a difference. So having, from my end, managed the program that we have ongoing in Kenya on an annual basis, I am intimately familiar with the budget and the numbers, how many cookers and the timeline, et cetera. And from that perspective alone, I can say that we were able to double our impact on the year that we won the prize. And so that meant we doubled the numbers of solar cookers, if you just look at the budget and what that program is doing on an annual basis. However, come back and look at the video of Rebecca and how she's cooking. This changed her life, and she has said that this has probably saved her life, given the struggles that she often had been going through to access firewood. So that's part of the impact, is changing lives, saving lives. And so I want to acknowledge that very, very clearly. Yes, I was at the laureate celebration this past year in New York, but even before that, winning this prize has opened up some other doors. And about a year ago, we were invited to attend a TED Countdown event in London. And that was an extraordinary event. It was bringing together, it was a challenging event. It was bringing together people who work in the fossil fuel industry and people who work in the renewable energy industry in the same space and time to have conversations. And that was very interesting, and I think it was enlightening for everybody who was there. So we would not have been invited to that event had we not won the prize. So that was a fantastic opportunity to go there. Also, the level of recognition that the prize brings. We're able to put this on our website, state this in proposals. And when an organization is seeking funding, if you can list the awards that you've won and how that has impacted what your organization does, that makes a difference. So we know that has impacted some of the potentials for our seeking additional funds. It definitely strengthens our proposals. Now, coming back to the event that was in New York City just a few months ago, the laureate celebration, there's a community coming together here. And I was delighted to be there at that event, to meet other laureates and judges and talk to them. And found that there really is a common interest. We're working on as a unified group now to make a difference on the climate front. So we are now having this common front under the name Keeling Curve Prize. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that I often point that Keeling Curve out. So the Keeling Curve Prize is named after a person, Keeling, the last name Keeling. And I find that the Keeling Curve is so important that I actually include it in our portable hard copy of our presentation material that Solar Cookers International brings to events like this. And I just print out a new copy of it every time, because this truly is an indicator of what's going on. How are we doing? And so I'll just share this real quick. You've probably seen this before, but over time, the amount of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere has been going up on an annual basis. You see cycles of when it's fall and spring, winter, summer. There are oscillations, but we're not pulling that down. And so this is a reality check. And fortunately, I have reason to bring this out because of the Keeling Curve Prize. It reminds me, show this. I showed this at the TED event, and it's here with me here at COP28, and it will be updated as we go. We have to turn this around. So that is some of the impact that winning the Keeling Curve Prize has had to us, and we really appreciate having this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Alan, for sharing what motivates all of us and brings us together. Because as each of our panelists have been saying, a single one of us can't do this on our own. It takes all of us working together. So here's our audience participation section. The beautiful thing about solar cooking and the Keeling Curve Prize is there's an opportunity for you to be a part of the solution. So we welcome questions from the audience, or if there's any questions from online, or also if any panelists have questions for each other, now is a great time to do that. So I'll open it up in case anybody has questions from the audience, or questions online, or questions for our panelists. Otherwise, I have a lot more questions here, which I don't think we'll have time for all of them, but this is such an engaging conversation.
I'll throw out a question for the solar cookers. So one of the things that people say, one of the fallacies they say all the time is, the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow, and how are we going to do this with renewable energy? How much work are you guys doing with some of the battery technology? Because that's an area, like the energy is an area of our prize, and we're really seeing some interesting innovation in really small kind of like graphene batteries and things like that. And I'm wondering how much you coordinate with battery technology.
That is a great question. Thank you for asking. And one of the really awesome opportunities for us as a network leader and collaborator is that we can't do everything by ourselves, but we're paying attention to what our collaborators are doing in terms of their research, and then we're able to help share that as well. And we also play a really important role in terms of testing. So Alan, as our program and science director, you can share a little bit more about the important role SCI plays in terms of testing solar cookers.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Caitlin. But I think I should address the battery question as well. But I can start at a small level, which is something that Keith mentioned earlier as some of the complementary technologies. Batteries store energy, and they can store thermal energy. So the simple heat retention basket is one of those batteries, basically. After the food has been cooking for a while, and maybe you don't want to eat until late in the evening after the sun has gone down, you can take your food out of your solar cooker and put it into a heat retention basket and still have a very warm meal late in the evening. The first time I really appreciated that personally was in 2013 when I was on what was called a solar cooking trek, a solar trek in Nepal. And during that time, 24 trekkers were at high altitude trekking for 9 days, and all of the meals were prepared using portable solar cookers. And in the evening, we had, after dark, when it was really cold outside, we had warm meals because they were cooked during the day and then put into the heat retention basket to stay warm until the evening. So this is a technology that's really an appropriate technology for heat retention that can be produced at the local level. Women's groups are awesome at doing that, and so we do try to encourage that to happen as a complementary technology. At our testing program, I'll just reiterate, I don't know if this has been said yet, so this may be the first time I'm saying it today. Solar Cookers International used to be a manufacturer of solar cookers, but has stopped because the solar cooker that SCI produced, we have a model over there. It's the Cook It, and so a very simple solar cooker. That cooker has taken off to have a life of its own as an open source model. So we have the design plans on our website, and people can make them. So there was some strategy in that decision to no longer be a manufacturer. And what I mean by that is that about 7 years ago, a gap in the solar cooking sector was identified, and that was that there was no internationally agreed upon standard on how to test a solar cooker. There were various ideas, but there was no single international standard. So SCI thought, okay, that's an opportunity, let's go for that. And right at about that time, the International Organization for Standardizations, ISO, had launched an initiative for producing international standards for testing clean cook stoves. Now, solar cookers are a part of that, and so that gave us guidance on how to basically develop a testing platform at SCI. We've become a testing organization, and we call our program the Performance Evaluation Process, or PEP for short. And the PEP program, well, it's very simple. It harmonizes with the ISO standards for clean cook stoves, and we measure the temperature over time of water that's being heated in a solar cooker, and we compare that temperature to the ambient temperature. We use freshman level equations, so this is an accessible routine that people can understand, they can read about it. But ultimately, we're able to measure what we call the standard cooking power in watts. So now we have the ability to get a number that is a performance specification for any solar cooker and provide that to the world. So we do post these values on our website after a solar cooker manufacturer has given us written permission to do so. But again, prior to this, there was a lot of confusion in the solar cooking sector, or to those who wanted to invest in solar cookers, either as an individual consumer or maybe a large-scale program. So this has been extremely important now that we have accountability in our sector, credibility for what a solar cooker can do. So this is now available. We are a testing organization, and we also have a partner in Nairobi that is actively involved. And during this past year, I have to say that they finalized the PEP tests for the solar cookers that we are using in Kenya. So this is also part of the Keeling Curve involved initiative that we were able to double the impact of. And yeah, so please know about that, especially those who want to invest at large scale. We have heard here at this COP and at previous COPs that this is critical to advancing and scaling solar cookers worldwide. there needs to be an internationally agreed upon standard for how to measure the performance. We have that now, and we're measuring those values. And we encourage that any initiative involve PEP-tested cookers. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alan. And I believe we had a question from the audience.
Thank you. You mentioned that you avoid use regular cooking. You say the theory. I mean, it's possible to use the 30%, something like that. Why not 100% of?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and we've heard that question from others. So we've thought through this when we came up with our economic impact surveys and studies, that 1/4 usage was something that was reasonable on average for somebody who has a solar cooker. So there are some days where there's very little sun, and those days might not be appropriate for solar cooking. So we call solar cooking an integrative solution, where it's integrated into what a household may already have in terms of cooking solutions. So on rainy days, we can't use this type of solar cooker. So that's part of the ratio. But why not 100%? In areas that are particularly sunny, this number could go much higher, definitely, but then it might also need to be balanced on average for those people who are extremely busy and maybe they have to travel for work, and so there's more challenges. We found that through our surveys of usage, that the 1/4% is actually a pretty good one. We would love to see that go higher. I'm a solar cook, and I live in New York. I work at home, and so it's convenient for me to solar cook on every sunny day, and I do. I love solar cooking. So when it's sunny, I do that. And when I do that, I wanted to connect with something that you said about methane. I don't use my gas stove. So even in the United States or in other countries where maybe gas would be the preferred usage for cooking, that can be reduced with the usage of a solar cooker, and that's something that's extremely important. So we're championing to solar cook as often as you can on sunny days. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we will be available after the event to answer more questions, and as well, we encourage you to sign up for more information, because we're all about empowering folks with more information. So we do invite you to continue the conversation after the session as well. But I do want to give our panelists a chance to share some closing remarks and share. I mean, we've had such an inspiring discussion, but I want to give everybody a chance to share from your perspective, why is it urgent that we scale up these climate solutions? And I think I'll start on the far end, so we can end with Jackie, our co-organizer here. So again, why is it urgent that we scale up these climate solutions from your perspective? Why are you here today? Why do you care?
Well, I think we have the solutions. I think the money is there. We need to be that bridge to, I think it's a no-brainer. The solutions have to be scaled up, because without that we are dead. And I'm talking about our species, not, I mean, all the incalculable harm we have done to the living fabric of the planet. It can all be forgiven if we can heal it back. Then we would have truly lived up to the potential of the human race, that, when the chips are down, we really can innovate our way out of it. And sometimes innovate is not a very narrow term, not a scientific innovation or not a social sector innovation. It's innovation also as in reimagining things. The American futurist Alvin Toffler famously said that the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those that cannot read and write. It will be those that cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. So it is time for us to unlearn and relearn everything we have learned, because that has brought us where we are right now. So that's why we need to scale the solutions. That's why we need to be that bridge. That's why we need to interpret that risk in a way that the financial world understands, and reduce that and mitigate that risk where we can by bringing in other actors whose presence itself in the room mitigates the risk. Sometimes you produce things without knowing where the market is, or if there is a market. But if you have an offtake agreement already signed, if you can negotiate that and bring in those people, it could be, I was just sitting here thinking, maybe you're already doing it, but the UN Office for Project Services, it procures things. It's the central hub for procurement. So when you have a refugee camp, getting them that source of fuel that will help cook is an extraordinary effort, because it's either a war zone or a natural disaster zone. Can Solo Cookers International be that intermediary that actually brings in all those things and puts it onto those portals, start that conversation? And I actually met with the Undersecretary General for UNOPS, the Executive Director, who's a former minister from Portugal. And I was touched. We spent about an hour together discussing how to collaborate. He's an extraordinary human being. He'll just grab it with both hands, George Moreira da Silva. So, so there are these opportunities. Sometimes just identifying these opportunities and being that connector and stepping in. Because sometimes, companies produce things, they just don't have any idea. Yes, they have salespeople and all, but some of these fundamentally important opportunities might not even be on their radar because it's perhaps too big, too far, and so you already are playing that role. So that's the kind of, so that is exactly why we should scale, and it's not a lot of effort, and I say this from personal experience. We've been doing it for a while. Sometimes just getting people across the table, actually. It's that simple as that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we've got about 2 minutes per person, so go for it.
I'll be as fast as I can. So if I zoom out, and when I think about this, there's kind of three main areas where we've got to do our work. The first is kind of stabilizing the climate. That is most effectively effectuated by emissions and figuring out the most harmful emissions and how we stop emitting them. Building up adaptive capacity, because climate is destabilizing now, and so we have to have the ability to be resilient and to build better systems that allow for that resiliency to mean that we have a buffer between harsh climate and people. And then I think stabilizing the floor and removing the ceiling for people, right? These are the three areas where if we do our job well, we wind up in 2100, humans 2.0, right? And in a world that actually works, that is sustainable, that's just. And so, there's in the auspices of the United Nations, where we find ourselves here today, the concept of shared but differentiated responsibility comes to mind, right? That is to say that each of us plays a role, but not everyone plays the same role. And so identifying what your differentiated role, either as a human person or as an entity, an investor, a corporate, a funder, what that role looks like means that you have a toolkit available to you that is differentiated, right? That everyone has a different set of tools because of how they show up in the world, their lived experience, their professional experience. So having solutions at our fingertips allows us to identify which of those tools we can effectuate, invest in, deploy, support, that achieves those one or all of those three things. And I think that's the reason why having solutions at the helm is so important, and having it well organized, well structured, supported, and catalyzed with things like the Keeling Curve Prize is so important for what happens next.
Thank you for summarizing that so nicely. And solar cooking is helpful for both mitigation and adaptation, so very well said. Alan, if you could speak on behalf of Solar Cookers International to wrap things up.
Thank you, Caitlin, and thank you, Stefan and Satya, for your remarks. We really appreciate that you're here today, and it's helping to broaden our scope as well to hear from you. So thank you very much, and we hope to continue working together as part of the Keeling Curve ecosystem, we might call it, or this family. And if I could just bring it back to the individual level for a moment, and if I can also speak from my personal experience from my childhood, my father was posted in West Africa for a few years in the country that was called La Haute Volta, Upper Volta. We were in Ouagadougou. And we have somebody from Ouagadougou here today, and we've been enjoying conversations. But at that time, I remember we used to travel in the countryside. I was about 9, 10 years old. This is going back a while. And that country is now called Burkina Faso. And we would see women and young girls walking across barren areas as we would travel through the countryside, bringing home bundles of wood on their heads. And that was almost 50 years ago. Yes, I'm dating myself, but that was a long time ago. And now, that issue of deforestation and the struggle to find wood is worse. So we still have a lot of work to do, and while I'm shocked to hear forecasts of desertification that may reach on down through Togo to Lomé by 2050 if we don't get this together, the picture of that just is inconceivable. So we have a solution that we think can help curb that, slow that down, and it's so simple. This can change people's lives. It can preserve the environment. It can save money. It's a worthwhile investment, and the technology is proven. The food tastes good. It's a lot of fun. It's educational. It's so much. It empowers women and young girls. So the next generation is really, it's an exciting aspect to this. This is what brings me hope. And I think for SCI as a whole, is that we have a next generation that now knows these solutions and can bring them to the table and implement them in their communities. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so Caitlin, you asked the question, why is this urgent to scale up? And so I'm going to take it out to the macro level because Alan went into the personal level. 8.8 billion people and growing on the planet. People want energy access, and people want health and safety and stability. And that's not the way it's going to go if we keep emitting greenhouse gases into our world. Things will perish and oceans will die, and it's a time to choose. I see this as sort of a domino effect. We can go in one direction and things will collapse, or we can go in the other direction and opportunity and value will come out of a climate transition. So I think that's why it's urgent. And one of my favorite things that I think defines this moment is ask yourself who you are. And it's not about that question, it's about how you act. And your actions are what define you.
I couldn't have said it better. Thank you so much.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you for being a part of the solution.